Hi, I'm George Sandmann. I'm the president and CEO of Growth Drive, and Growth Drive is a precision system you'll use for driving client profits, growth, and value. And today we're going to talk about why you might use Growth Drive's clarity, strategic capacity, and business value analysis. Proven, precise. Guys, your colleagues absolutely love this. So this is an impromptu, ad hoc, hot seat. Rather than having a guest this week, our guest is this terrific software suite. So I'm going to jump in. Here we are, logged in. Now imagine you have a subscription. Imagine that you're in, you've run this with clients. I want to show you how easy it is to start this. Now, why would you use this? Imagine you're sitting with an existing client, right? You're in an accounting firm and you have an existing client that you want to have a conversation about helping them grow profits and business value. Imagine that you're a wealth advisor and you want to talk to your client about the relationship between their personal wealth goals and their business as an asset contributing to those goals. Imagine you're a fractional CFO and you want to highlight the relevance, your reach and relevance as a strategic partner with the CEO, helping them create sustainable, profitable growth. All those conversations make sense. You're a business advisor. You want to show that you can be a peer with the CEO, helping them predictably and sustainably grow free cash flow. All of those conversations are powered by this tool, all those conversations and more. We are strategic planning. We are exit planning. We are wealth planning. Okay. Now, we don't have any specific wealth planning tools per se, but wealth advisors are using this every day. So, how do you start this conversation? Now, imagine you are sitting with a CEO, a business owner, and you want to have a conversation with them. Conversation is going to sound a little bit like this. Listen, Madam CEO, I don't work with just anyone. I only work with businesses where you and I agree that you're going to generate a return on investment from the work we're going to do together. You're going to invest time and treasure in taking this business to a new place. And I really only work with people where we're confident at the get-go that you can generate a return. Does that make sense? Yes, it makes sense. Now, I'm going to be shocked because you're not begging for business. Does it make sense? Okay, well then to do that, you and I need to have an agreement, a common understanding of where the business is today. Does that make sense? Yes, it makes sense. Terrific. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? No. I mean, who says no to that? How are you going to do this? Very easy. You click Start Analysis, anywhere you have access to the internet, software as a service, and away we go. Now, you're going to notice right away that we have jumped straight into an analysis because we are creating a common understanding about where the business is today. And I'm not going to get into education about strategic capacity and the 3 dimensions of business growth. We have plenty of education and training on that. You're going to ask one question on each of 24 growth driving objectives, right? 24 growth driving objectives divided into 3 groups of 8. One set of 8 growth driving objectives per dimension makes up the 3 dimensions of business growth. And what you're going to do is you're going to walk your client through, here we are in predictable, sustainable growth. Do you have a strategic plan? Do you actively nurture your culture? Can you find people and make them effective quickly? Okay. Guys, it is all here. So, but we're asking, this is discovery. We're going to ask one question. So in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to jump into a completed report, but you'll notice it's very elegant. Your logo across the top. The whole suite is white label. I'm going to jump into a completed report. So now I've switched gears and I'm in the advisors. You have an advisor's view here from inside. Now, the tool is only available to you. Your client cannot access this stuff unless you give them permission. So we've asked one question, and your client, importantly, think of the psychology. We're going to boil through the BS. I'm the greatest. We're the best. I have a fabulous lifestyle. That all may be true, but we're going to look at this business from the private capital markets perspective. This is why you are so relevant to your client. This isn't how, what EOS does and says, well, how do you feel about the business? That's important, But what we really care about, if we're talking about transferable business value, is a buyer's perspective. Who are those buyers? They're private capital markets, private equity groups, etc. How would a professional acquirer see this business? What risks and opportunities would they perceive in this business? And that is precisely what this first suite is designed to educate, to discover. It's a discovery suite. See the word right here? And to educate the client. The name of the game, we want to position you as someone who is bringing knowledge to the table and freely sharing that knowledge with the client. You prove your value by delivering value. And after we're done with our conversation today, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, there are two other areas in this software suite. There is a deep analysis. This generates the data you will need for creating a strategic plan. Whether you do it yourself, hand it off to your client, work with a third party, a lot of options. We also have growth planning and execution tools. We're going to jump into one of those simulator in a sec. Okay, so how do we discover? How do we get a deep understanding? And then what do we do with that information in planning and delivering change? Cool. Now, right now, we're talking about discovery. Pause, take a deep breath. I know I bring a lot of energy. Your client has just heard herself say that she is not top of the charts. Now, you have an effective senior leadership team, and the business can run smoothly in your absence. Owner dependence is the number one deal killer, right? That's partly true. I would posit that in most businesses, it's not really true, but I have the data. So your client's importantly going to hear herself say that it's partly true. It's not really true. We don't do that at all. And that, based on that analysis, we're going to ask a couple more questions. It's very straightforward. You see how intuitive this is? If you can click on a radio button, you can run the analysis. If you can say, all right, why are you here? Name, rank, serial number. I'm preparing my company for sale, and I need to understand how we'll look at an acquirer. They're going to give you some great insights. We'll show them the range of possible. What's your number one goal? We can only focus on one thing if we're going to do things right. Get some business information. Now, pause. This is a very sophisticated system that calculates a market comparison value for the business, market comp. We are going to compare this business to a robust, curated data set of successfully completed private equity transactions. The complication happens behind the scene. All you need to know, and it's designed so that the CEO will have the information at the table. I don't have to go off and get financial reports at the table. Their industry, if you don't know what NAICS code, you can Google it. You'll have the NAICS in seconds. Gross revenue, net profit. Okay, I'm not going to get into why don't we talk about EBITDA at this point? Because most CEOs don't like to use technical jargon, right? The data's in on that one as well. So we're going to use the word net profit, even though we professionals know that EBITDA is the name of the game. Cool. Business formation. Now, look, we've asked a couple of dozen questions. We've asked them why they're at the table. We've gotten these two numbers, and you're going to generate an immediate report. You are just a few minutes into a discovery meeting, leaving the balance of the meeting for talking about the realm of the possible. In this report, we calculate this is the central number in the growth drive methodology. It is being picked up by private equity groups. This is a shorthand for measuring how well the business can deliver predictable profits, sustainable growth, and transferable value. The private capital markets value a business that can predictably and sustainably grow free cash flow, FCF. Okay? Strategic capacity measures that ability. We're going to get into, I'm going to refresh this here. I've logged in one too many times. Here we go to our report. So we have our strategic capacity. We're saying, hey, you've created an asset that's worth $30.6 million. Latent value, total value. By the way, that's the number the CEO probably thinks their business is worth because they've never been through due diligence. Due diligence is an adversarial audit where the people on the other side are they're not trying to do anything evil, right? The private capital markets want to understand threats to ROI. They want to understand the risk profile of a business. The way they do that is through a lens called due diligence. And so before due diligence, this business on paper might be worth 30 million. After completing due diligence, it won't be. Why? Because their strategic capacity isn't sufficient. The risk profile of the business is elevated. I hope this is all making sense. Now, to your client, this is news. You are educating them. Strategic capacity is a new concept. It is easy to understand. It is intuitive. It is relevant, right? Right? Imagine having this conversation. Get into what's putting headwind on growth. What are your growth killers? What are your deal killers? You might say, well, you've said you're preparing the business for sale. The first thing we're going to want to do to maximize value is we're going to want to take care of these growth killers. We're going to look at your margins, get good numbers out of the system, create a strategic plan. And it sounds like their marketing is askew. No problem. I'll show you how to uncover all that. Okay, so we've talked about strategic capacity. Now, they're probably itching at this point because this is the chart. They remember you show dollar signs, people latch onto them. Okay, well, how does that play out? Now, I've told you this is a pre-populated. There's some information we've already added to the financial data module. Doesn't matter. Just sitting there in the room without any financial reports, you're going to have two looks at value. The latent value of the business, right? If you had high strategic capacity, this business is worth $30.6 million. Very precise, by the way, within 5 to 10% of a formal valuation. Investment banks use this, private equity banks use this system because it is very accurate. It's very precise. I'll leave that alone. We predict that after completing due diligence, your M&A price, your post-due diligence value would be 16.2. Now, as an aside, a business with strategic capacity of 53, I would be beseeching my client to not try to sell right now because due diligence would be so onerous. It would be very unpleasant. Now, we have two other looks at value. Of course, we have a DCF look. In one of these DCF looks of discounted cash flow, calculation of value based on a projection of future earnings, and using strategic capacity to imply the discount for company-specific risk. Stay with me. We educate you on all of this, but hey, man, if we use strategic capacity as company-specific risk, you're worth 20.2. If we use a traditional model, about 22 million. So there's a $1.7 million delta between those two. That's an important conversation, risk profile. Now, if your client is looking at doing an internal transfer where they may be the bank, this is a heck of a conversation, right? This is a third party bringing the money to the table. Here it's your client funding the deal, holding the paper. We better understand its strategic capacity, predictably and sustainably grow free cash flow, and their ability to carry the paper. This is the value of the business for an internal transfer. This is the value of the business for an internal transfer. And we can have the same conversation in both exit instances, which is you need to increase strategic capacity in order to increase value. So I'm not going to go down the road. So what else do we have? Well, Madam Business Owner, your business could be worth $66.5 million, we predict, in 5 years if you grow at the industry rate at a robust growth, but doable growth. I mean, you maximize transferable value. Quick aside, whenever you hear me say transferable business transferable, high strategic capacity, we use 85. We're not sandbagging and going for 100. This is at 85%. Okay, so a very conservative view, a very conservative. I mean, it's all sorts of fun. And over here we have, okay, my screen isn't big enough. I'm going to break that down a little bit. Here we can start triangulating. Well, your strategic capacity was 53. It has two elements. These conversations about value, about how the private capital markets view value. This is a net new for your client. In all likelihood, they have never sold a business before. They have never been through due diligence. And due diligence can be somewhat painful or profoundly painful. It's never fun. Okay. Now imagine you're sitting with a client. He's just heard himself say that he's not top of the charts in 4, 14, 21 of the 24 growth driving objectives. You've educated them about wanting to consider time to market. Hey, man, have you considered that if you sell in a bear market, there's a flight to quality and you have to have very high strategic capacity? Say it with me, strategic capacity. If it's a bull market, well, then we might be able to get away with a little more. But if we're going to be planning to sell the business, let's plan to sell it at the right point in the market. And these 10-year cycles have been, if history's any indication, we know what the cycles look like. Subject to change without notice. Okay. So listen, Jane, you're telling me that my business could be worth 30.6. We've looked at the range of values. We've talked about strategic capacity. Well, what does it need to be worth? What does it need to be worth? Well, that's why we created the equity value planning module, guys. This is incredibly educational, incredibly powerful knowledge transfer. This is Diane Ridge. She is running a $54 million gross revenue manufacturing business. It is reasonable for her to say, I want to take $100,000 a month out of my portfolio. That is the lifestyle I intend. Lifestyle, very different. Lifestyle is we selected that word on purpose. 1.2 million, fair. What does this business need to be worth to get there? And you're going to input, some very straightforward. I own 70% of the business. We have business debt. We have to pay the lawyers, the bankers, the accountants. We have Uncle Sam to take care of. Planning can take care of a lot of this, but let's get it on paper, right? There's no good news or bad news, only data. And we're saying, all right, so this business is worth this much today. We're going to have to grow because our target year revenue isn't 54 million, it's 98. Now I'm going to push that up artificially, guys, because we know our range of multiples here is between 3 and 6. So let's say we're going to trade at 3 with profit margin at our current 9.4. Let's just go stasis. We have to grow the business 27.5% per year from 54 to 182. That is a tough hill to climb. Okay, that's a hill you're going to die on. Barring, also, I'm talking about organic growth driven by the business's own cash flow. There's the key. Strategic capacity drives the multiple. So we want them to understand, without going and hinking with the percentage of the business they own, et cetera, we want to have a conversation. I mean, this is an oh my God moment. This is what some refer to as a triggering event, right? You have triggered the client to say, oh my gosh, that's impossible, right? No problem. What happens if we increase your strategic capacity to a point where you could get a multiple of 5? What if we can add 1 point of margin? Does that sound reasonable? Let's just do those 2 changes. Haven't changed anything else. Now we have to grow at 13%. Well, that's interesting. How does that play out? I'm going to click submit. 13% going from 54 to 98 as an entrepreneur, that doesn't scare me at all. I know it's not going to be easy, but I do know that it's doable. Doubling the size of the business in 5 years is a doable do. Now, how is the client seeing you right now in this conversation? Remember, we asked the 24 questions. We talked about latent value. We showed them their predicted M&A price, their post-due diligence price. We've talked through the equity value planner. You don't have to be a wealth advisor to connect this business as an asset to personal wealth goals. If you're working with a wealth advisor, congratulations, good job. That conversation becomes even more powerful. Your client is getting, their knowledge bank is getting just filled up with great stuff. Now, how does this play out in the simulator? Guys, this is just discovery. It won't surprise you that many of your colleagues are selling this conversation for a price. Others use it as a loss leader. That's up to you. Okay, simulator. How does this play out? Okay, well, I'm just going to jump into the simulator because this is a planning tool. I'm going to scroll down. There is a lot here. We provide robust training. I'm going to scroll down, and I see this red, and it's like, this is not pulled from the EVP. I need to sync it. Let's sync it up. Value updated. 12.8. That number sound familiar? All right. Now at 12.8, let's just look at gross revenue. I need to grow this thing at 12.8 as long as I'm increasing my strategic capacity. I'm going to go to two charts, show you how this works. One, gross revenue project over the next 5 years. Now, here's the industry. They're underperforming the industry. That is an important conversation, right? But let's black that out for now. Here are three numbers we're going to track. Blue is if you just keep doing what you're doing and growing at the rate you have, we project that in 5 years, growing at the same rate, you'll get to 93 million. Anybody remember the number from EVP? Your sustainable growth rate, which is based on two data points that are in the financial data module, I'll show you in a sec, is about the same. You're not outstripping it. So let's just say that this is good enough for now. Small changes in behavior can bring those two together, but we're not going to outstrip our cash. We need to at the required growth rate here, the green, we need to get to 98. So, we're within 5 million, guys. We're within 5 million. I'm going to scroll down and show you how that plays out in strategic capacity. So now this is value and the impact of a 10%. If we increase your strategic capacity by 10% per year, every year for the next 5 years, let's get rid of their industry again. We apply the same metrics to the industry data. Well, we're going to go 45 if we keep doing what we're doing, and we need to get to 50.1. You see how we're starting to narrow this down. Now, what am I going to do? There's a tremendous amount here, but you're starting to bring some reality to the plan. You're starting to say, in some conversations, we're going to need to make some radical changes. We're going to need to grow the business. But that's planning, right? That's education. That is a conversation that must be had. In others, it becomes a shoo-in. Oh my gosh, the business, I don't have to do much. Maybe I can throttle back. And we're going to hit my personal wealth goals. Got to keep going. But imagine this conversation. And imagine this conversation with, by the way, if you want to sell the business, third-party sale, you're underperforming your industry significantly. Why would they buy you? Because the business owner has hired you to help them increase their strategic capacity. Revenue and net income pop when you work on strategic capacity. I'd be happy to share why, but that's not the purpose of this conversation. The purpose of this conversation is to help you imagine a much more powerful, impactful, transformational conversation when you're sitting down and meeting a client for the first time, when you're sitting down with an existing client and helping them understand how relevant you are to every aspect of their business. And ladies and gentlemen, I am not advocating, let's say, for example, you're an exit planning wealth advisor. I'm not advocating that you learn how to lift the hood and turn the wrenches on the business engine. No, I'm advocating that you educate your client and then say something like, and maybe you should bring in some outside expertise. And I happen to know Tim. He's a C3D certified in the 3 dimensions of business growth. He is killer at helping you with these issues. And we're going to create a project plan that will execute over the next few years that is going to get you, that is highly likely to be successful at getting you from where you are today to your intended value, to your intended results in terms of profit, in terms of gross revenue, in terms of transferable business value. Make sense? I'd love to share with you why this is relevant to third-party sales, to internal transfers, and to the oil well, right? The ultimate business, the oil well, which is delivering where your client has exited the accountabilities chart, right? has exited the accountability trap, but remains the owner, remains compensated, is still able to take their dividends, etc. So there's a lot here. Man, I'd love to dig into the other modules, but this is why you might consider starting your conversations, educating clients, demonstrating your reach and relevance to their business needs, to their personal wealth needs, using a tool like the clarity analysis. And ask me when we talk about, ask me to show you the Claire AI. Clarity has spawned an AI agent named Claire. She is smart as heck, and can turn this analysis into a lot. Your imagination is the limit. Okay, this is a fun conversation, and I'm really looking forward to working with you guys. Give me a call if you're curious about this. We're here. We're committed to your success, and we're happy to help. All right. Thank you, and have a great day. This episode is brought to you by the Growth Drive Summit. Our theme this year is building a profitable advisory business. Join us in Charleston, South Carolina, October 6th, 7th, and 8th. Expand your network, learn new skills, and generally have a good time. This is a top-rated event. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.